Scrutiny Committee meeting for the 22nd of September. Now, I was doing thank you, Jamie. Bear with me. I'll just get the papers up. Okay then, right. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to come along to the meeting today. We are in County Hall. We are hybrid. We do have some members of the public, so I'm going to go through and then try and explain things as we go. So first of all, welcome to everyone. My name's Lee Redman. I'm lucky enough to be the chair of this Scrutiny Committee. The Scrutiny Committee's role, I suppose, in council is to in effect make sure that the decisions that council are taking are done in a robust manner. For those of you that are stopping today, I expect when we start talking policy or procedure, we'll start talking about having the necessary information and all the other bits and bobs in relation to that. Members, you will have seen the agenda. The paper have been shared. First of all, an apology from me. The paper, there were some supplementaries. I know how much we dislike supplementary papers, but I felt, and you'll probably hear me repeat this, that we needed as much information as possible to be able to base our decisions and comments on the appropriate paperwork. So apologies for that on my behalf. Obviously, when we go through the agenda, what we would be doing is someone will be presenting them to us, etc. Make a note of your questions as you go through. But what I will do at the end, rather than make me do my soft shoe shuffle at the end, if you want to ask a question, don't wait till the end. You put your hand up or or draw your attention. I can then start a list of questions so that we can bring those as we go along. The meeting is being audio recorded. And also, as agendas are electronic these days, although you will see I do have papers, please, when you're making reference to specific points, if you could use the page number so that we're able to make sure that we are all speaking to the same points. This afternoon, there are no fire alarms due. So if it does happen, please follow the appropriate officers out the building and muster together. Right. Is that everything, Jamie? Okay, thank you. So agenda item 1 of our agenda is apologies for absence. Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. We have no formal apologies for absence, Chair. One of our co-opted members, Mary Cox, is online, as is the Executive Director of Children's Services, Claire Winton.
Thank you. Members, do we have any apologies that I've not made of or substitutes? Okay, no worries. I just realised. So again, so just for those new into the room, we have there are elected members who are members of this committee. There are elected members who are visitors and observers. There are elected members who have an executive role for children's services and the council. There are also officers in the room. So just to explain, so an elected member is, as it says, someone who's elected into a role. Our officers are here to both advise and comment on specific elements. So the officers are those employed by council. The elected members are those elected to council. Generally, what would happen is that I try to make sure that we get as broader input into the conversation as we can. We're joined virtually by people. You'll see them on the screens around it that are there to that there are some councillors there and there are also some officers there. In the same way, generally what we would do is the committee, that's the members around this table, are the ones that are able to make decisions, so to vote if it ever comes to a vote, but the other bit that's relevant is this committee can only make recommendations. We can't make decisions in as far as deciding how policy or procedure will be enacted or anything. So our job is to make recommendations to the executive, who are the ones that tell the officers supposedly what they should be doing or shouldn't. Generally, the way that I work is I'll take questions from members of the committee first, then members outside of the committee, should there be them, and I try to get as a broader consensus as we can. In the same way, members of the committee, should we wish to make any recommendations, you can do so at any point. We'll pick those up and then feed them in as we get to the appropriate bits. That was a long apologies for absence. Item 2 of our agenda is the declarations of interest. I'm asked to ask members of this committee if they have any relevant declarations of interest that are referenced in today's papers that are not already declared on your register of interest. Francis, Councillor Nicholson, could you use your microphone thing?
Personal interest in the item on the high needs capital as chairman of governors of schools involved.
Thank you. I take the silence as no others. So thank you very much. Item 3 of our agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. The meeting was held in the 11th of August. So it's to check that they are a true record and you're happy for me to sign them. Any points or comments in relation to the agenda? Are you happy that I sign them as a true record? I'll take the silence as yes. Thank you very much. So we move on. Item 4 of our agenda is public question time. I'm pleased to say that we're joined by 2 members of the public. Thank you for taking the time to come along. We've explained to them about the microphone, etc. So just a bit of protocol. One of the things that because we're not aware of your statement, we'll do everything we can to try and respond to what we can. If you could steer clear of any personal information, because it tends to get, because it's a public meeting and we try to avoid any issues or problems with that. However, thank you very much for taking the time. You have up to 3 minutes. I will be flexible, but so please don't feel any pressure. The important thing is that you're able to get your point across. So thank you. If you wanted to just introduce yourself first, I won't do that as part of the 3 minutes, just to make sure that the microphone's working.
Okay, hello, I'm Charlotte Gillingham. It's my husband, Tom.
Thank you, Charlotte and Tom, for coming along. And what we'll do, Charlotte, when you're ready, if you want to start, we'll just keep an eye on things as you go. And everyone's listening, we'll take notes. It's being recorded, but if you could leave your statement, if you're happy to, or get a copy to us, we can make sure that you get a full response. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. When applying for my son's school, I was directed to the council's Find a School page, and upon entering our postcode, the first result was Preston School, which is also the closest school to us in Yeovil, and his feeder school from primary. We specifically chose Preston because the school bus passes directly by our house, leading us to believe there would be no question about him being allowed a seat. On Preston's open day, I confirmed with staff that the bus passed our house, which further reassured me. Everything indicated our son would be eligible for a seat on that bus. According to the council's own admissions guidance, point 124, parents must include their nearest suitable school if they wish to apply for free travel. We felt we followed that guidance, yet somehow our allocated catchment school, Westfield, is actually the 3rd furthest from our address. It was only 8 weeks before he started school that we learned Preston was not our son's catchment school. This caused total shock and confusion, which was matched by everyone we spoke to. Not only does the school bus pass our front door twice daily, Preston and Westfield can often be seen sharing the very same bus. Even more baffling is that next to us in the village of East Coker, they share our catchment area, yet children there are allowed free transport to both Preston and Westfield schools due to a council policy which seems to have forgotten our village of Hardington. I was told by the council we couldn't even pay for a spare seat due to the new PSVAR accessibility laws, yet I'm aware there are many empty seats on this bus every day. As a result, we are forced to leave at the same time as the school bus to avoid traffic, then drive in convoy behind this bus. This completely unnecessary car journey is creating extra traffic and stress, but most worryingly, an extra 36 kilos of carbon dioxide every day. The journey takes us 30 minutes each way. That's 2 hours of driving every single day, driving that we should not have to be doing at all. We are forced to block up residential areas outside of school while we park and wait to collect our son, which causes local residents to complain. The emotional impact on our family has been massive. Our son is on a SEN register and struggles with high anxiety and depression. Starting secondary school was already going to be difficult for him, but this unnecessary stress has only made it worse. My husband and I are both self-employed, and we've had to completely reorganise our working hours to accommodate the school run, which has placed significant strain on our family's well-being. As parents who care deeply about the environment, we try to set a good example to our son, yet it's disheartening to see that the very people who are supposed to lead by example, we feel are letting our children down by failing to make sustainable choices. What kind of message does this send to future generations? We respectfully ask you to reconsider this decision to make a commitment to sustainability, allow our son a seat on the bus. He is desperate to be able to continue attending a school he is starting to settle in and is happy at. Thank you. I would appreciate a written response.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to. Perfect timing. Did you see that was the 3? Excellent. Thank you very much. As I say, it's clear that it's an issue, a personal issue to use. But what we'll do, I'll see whether I'll ask our executive member for Children's to make an initial response, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Charlotte, if I may, Charlotte and Tom. Thank you so much. I'm just going to talk to the camera, to the mic, which seems really rude, but people will hear it better at home, unfortunately. The joys of semi-television. Just to say, thank you so much for coming forward. Thank you for expressing it very clearly and expressing your concerns. It is obviously very much your initial situation that you're bringing forward, though you've raised some other issues around climate and around policies. So I think, just as the chair said, I would really, not having seen the senior statement before, I'd really like to take it away and make sure that we give you a proper written response. But I just wanted to thank you for coming here, and you're more than welcome to come and stay and listen to as much as you need to. I'm sure that's the chair's prerogative to extend that, but thank you for that. It's good to meet you, and we will come back to you with a response. Thank you.
So just to sort of say, so thank you for taking the time to come along for the statement. What I'll do is I'll say, if you're happy to leave a copy of your statement, what I'll do, I'll give you my chair's word that we'll get you a full written response. But what we'll also do to make sure that you can have you can understand the situation, we'll try to get you a meeting with the appropriate officer and maybe the executive member, so that we can help close this circle, because there's obviously a valid point to be made there. And it will also, I think it's fair for the council to be able to respond fully to you, Gavin, you having taken the time to come along and join us today. Thank you very much for that. What we'll do, we'll make sure that we get a response. But you're welcome to stay, but I'll move on. And if you wanted to discreetly get out, you're more than welcome to. But thank you anyway. Thank you. Okay, members, moving on then. So we move on to item number 5 of our agenda. Item 5 is our work programme. The observant amongst you will have noticed that our outcome tracker has had some work done, and we're starting to get a populated forward work plan. I gave members of the committee an undertaking that the Vice Chair and I would do our best to have an outlined work programme in front of us so that we can see where they are, and also to try and get some of the points that we've raised previously included. So we're getting there, is what I will say, with it. But the Vice Chair, myself, Ayushi, and our Scrutiny Manager have spent some time going through our outcome tracker. Just to remind everyone, so one of the things that became apparent a few years ago was when we were being continually looked over our shoulder by Ofsted and on our improvement journey, was the fact that sometimes this committee or other committees would, during the meeting, say something that wasn't necessarily a recommendation, but it was something that we picked up. So the outcome tracker was there to pick up all of the points, and also to remind us and officers when issues or reports were be required to come back to us. So that's our outcome tracker, as is always the case. And I'll start reminding you all again, is that this committee, we would happily listen to anyone that makes any suggestions for items or issues that the committee would perhaps want to look into, purely because the Vice Chair and myself, regardless whether we would like to be everywhere and know everything, that's something that doesn't happen. And you are our eyes and ears as well for important issues. So what I will say is, as always, please put forward recommendations for items for our agenda. I will say, please put it in writing, because I've got a memory like a sieve, as most of you will know me well enough by now to know. And it helps me and the Vice Chair understand what your angle and what your point is in relation to it for our agenda. So any points or comments in relation to our work programme, or I say to Ruth?
Like with me, I'm missing the children, young people's plan on here. Do we need to see that?
as I say, we've been cutting things and adding things, so I'll make sure that's added to children and young people's plans so that we can respond and make sure that we cover it appropriately. One of the things I have said, you've heard me say, over time, our agendas have changed, and our the requirements on us have changed. I still believe that we should have a should or must, should and could list so that we can be clear on where we are. That's something I'm pressing officers in the senior leadership team for as well. But thank you, Ruth, for that point. I'll take the silences. Moving on. Okay, then agenda item 6 is our lead members' annual report. Heather, thank you for taking the time to put it together. Just for clarity, members, because I have to admit that this new policy did catch me a little bit by surprise. I thought that the reports that would have gone to full council would come to this committee, so I'd have assumed that the Scrutiny Committee's end of year report would also come here, but I was told and I discovered that it's going to full council on Thursday. It is included in the agenda pack, so I'm happy for if anyone thinks I've missed something or want to add to it. What I will say is, though, again, no fault of anyone in particular, because it's a Thursday full council meeting and a Thursday afternoon, I may not be in the room to present my report. As some of you may or may not know, I have granddad duties on a Thursday, and it was too late before I realised what was going on. However, I will do everything I can to be there to make that report. Heather, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yes, it is quite nice to have. I was as foxed as you were, to be fair, Chair. I really thought that the two reports would go to the same place, but hey, they are today, which is the most important thing. So it's you get 2 end of term reports, really, one from me and one from yourselves in quick succession. I just wanted to say that I did put a big thank you in there because I must, in the preface, I really must say a thank you to all the officers all across the council, all of the members, and all the people who we have a number of independent people on our body here, and there are many more outside who work tirelessly for children and the children in our county, and I'm really grateful for that. I've been bowled over 2 years in now to know how consistently positive people are about supporting our children. So just a big thank you to everybody first. I did also have to acknowledge, of course, the sad events of the summer in West Somerset, and that's nobody wants to see anything like that. But again, I would say if there's a positive to be taken from what happened with that accident in Minehead is the fact that the communities there, the professionals, the families, all really rallied around and are continuing to rally around. And that again is another testament to how well we work for children in our county, and I'm really, really grateful for that. So the report, to try to make the report as user-friendly as possible, lots of pictures, trying to ensure that not just the things that you hear from us about all the way through the year, you hear an awful lot about, we haven't got enough placements, we haven't got sufficiency in schools, this is always a challenge. Those things are absolutely right. But I always wanted to make sure that the reports actually bring out all the other things that we don't highlight nearly enough, trying to give you an idea of the things we do for children and with our children from pre-birth, essentially, and in communities all the way through until they're post-16 and beyond. I think that's really important, the things we don't normally see, and then also what we're trying to do in education to ensure that children get the best start in life through their education. So I don't want to say any more, otherwise I could read it all out, of course, but we haven't quite got time. I wouldn't do that to you. I don't do that in full council, just to be mean. But if you've got any questions about the report, I'm more than happy to either answer it if I can myself or pass it to a colleague who can. But I just hope it hits the spot about being readable and about bringing things to life that perhaps you might have seen before as children's scrutiny, but some of our other members might not have seen and might not know what we're covering. So I'm happy to take any questions or answer anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you for the report, Heather. While members are making their mind up, but there's a couple of points to that. I like the format. I think it's readable. I was really impressed with that. And a point that I was going to make in relation to it is one that I've made before, and it's more a concern more than anything else. Homes and Horizons, the work that project has done to help Somerset cannot be underestimated in any. However, my concern is that I would ask you through to the executive that we don't start pinning too many more of our hopes on it, because the more pressure we're putting on that process, the likelihood is that more likely mistakes will be made. We know that it's we hope the reason why it works so well, I think, is because we're able to tailor the places to the young people's needs. We look at that and we examine it all the way along. All I would ask is that our budget still shows that we have issues with external placements and all of and the placements are the important bit. So my comment would be let's not pin too much of our hopes and aspirations upon it. Let's let it work as it is, because I know that there'll be a decision coming forward to our next set of homes, and I think that's an important point to be added to it.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's a very good point. And I do try in rooms, and oddly enough, we were in this very room with a different set of people, I guess, and purposes this morning. But, you know, I think it's, you're right, it's a bit of it is accepted as being a very good thing and works incredibly well, and the outcomes for children and their children's lives are much better for those children who go through it. But Homes in Horizons is only intended for those most challenged children who are really comparatively small in number. And you're absolutely right, the other 150 or whatever who are in residential homes or wherever else, they are just as important, if not more important. And the model that we have for Homes in Horizons probably wouldn't quite work, as you say, for the wider group. So it'd be quite easy, I think, for people to say, well, if it's worked for the 8 that we've got now, 8 homes we've got now, why don't we do it for everybody? You go, no, that's not the point. The point is it's for that particular set of children. So, but that's a very good point, Chair, and I won't forget that one, and make sure we try and keep that focus on the other placements.
Thank you. Looks like you did get off lightly by the look of it, because you're not being inundated with lots of hands. So I'll add, I've never been missed an opportunity to play to the microphone. So I like the colours. I like the fact that our young people are mentioned there. Can I have an undertaking from you that the voice of the child will be something that we concentrate on and we continue with the good work that we already have?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously, we do have, you know, a major part of it, a considerable part in the report is about the engagement and participation sector of our work. So we're getting it sort of vicariously in the report through that. But absolutely, you are right. I think I need to take a leaf out of the children, young people's plan, and I can put mine and Claire's faces into sunflowers again. But actually get the voice of children coming through, because this is something we cannot do enough of, and also younger.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Older children as well.
We have a member stepped up to ask you a question. Andy, Councillor Hadley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just really to express my thanks to the executive and to the council for the support that we have received in Minehead over the summer. It was a tragic accident, and I think all the people in Minehead are very appreciative of the support they received. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I'll make sure that thanks get everywhere it needs to get. I just want to also just share something that in a situation like that, we have the National Emergencies Team, I think they're called. It's a charitable, not-for-profit organisation that comes in to try and help communities when they're in some kind of trauma after an incident like that. And of course, I didn't even know they existed before that, to be fair. And they came in and supported. But what they did say as well, I'm just going to put this right back at you, because one of the things that they said after the first meeting or so was, goodness me, strategically, you have got such a lot already in place in your community, and all the things that we would have been, apart from one or two, but mostly all the things community-wise that they would have made suggestions about to deal with this was already in place, and which made their lives easier. I mean, there's some technicalities about how you give out grant money and stuff like that, which we didn't have, and that's fine. But yeah, but I'll make sure we pass that on. It's really appreciated.
Okay, thank you. So that's that bit. So thank you, Heather. Thank you for your report. We move on just very quickly under the same heading. We've got our end of year report. So for those with your paper, so from page 51 onwards, it's a report of our work. So I'll take the opportunity, first of all, I'll do it formally in this room. Thank all officers and particularly you members for your support in that. What I will do is just the bit that was really my doing is on page 65, 4.14, which is reflections and looking forward. And the bit that I continually go on about there, but and I say it out loud because I think scrutiny at its best is to look at and scrutinise policy through its development going forward. One of the things that the DMP has shown us is that we're going to be making a lot of changes in the near future to different. My concern is that some of those decisions are taken in small bites. It sounds okay that you take it a bite at a time. The problem is you don't necessarily see the full impact until it's too late sometimes. So when it comes to policy development, I would ask the executive is that this scrutiny committee is considered as early as possible when it comes to decision making. Sometimes we could be helpful in take some of the more troublesome, more concerning decisions, and taking them through scrutiny means that the outcome is often around the country. It's shown quite often that it's a better product at the end. So what I would ask that the last bullet point is there, and it says with the support of executive early involvement in policy development. That's if I could have that in bold with stars and lots of flying things around it, because I think that is how this committee works at its best. So just to add this, so thank you to Ayushi and Jamie, our clerks, for this meeting and scrutiny manager, and thank you members for your contribution. I'm happy to take any questions, preferably now rather than at full count. Okay, no questions, that's fine. Thank you very much. We can move on. Agenda item 7. Just those observant amongst you will see that agenda item 7 makes reference to agenda items 8, 9 and 10. It was a little bit of confusion. So when we had our pre-agenda meeting, we discovered that one of the senior officers was poorly, and we would need to rejig things around a little bit. So I asked for a cover report to go in front of it. So the cover report actually says that we're doing things a little bit differently because of that. I have, on behalf of the committee, sent our get well regards to the officer, and I will do that. But so in effect, we're gaining some time. So if you think you're ahead between item 7 and item 8, you're going to get a break. I wouldn't get your hopes up because we're not that far ahead yet. So agenda item 7 was just making the point that we're doing things a little bit differently. Agenda item 8, which is the one we're going to come on to now, which is the first of our 3 main substantive items. So agenda item 8 is a high needs provision capital allocation, and Phil is going to be presenting that. So over to you, Phil. Thank you. I just realised I was being sorry. Phil Curd, could you like to introduce yourself, Mr. Curd, and so thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Curd. I'm the Head of Education Places at Somerset Council. Ayushi, can I check, are you driving the slides? Thank you. That's fine. So rather than take you through the report, we thought we would take you through a slide deck of each of the 3 next items, which all relate back to the deficit management plan that we have put together in education to try and work down our cumulative high needs overspend. The first item, when it is on the screen, is around the high needs provision capital allocation. And it's essentially an item for information ahead of a decision that goes to executive on the 1st of October. So from slide 1, the key points of discussion from this slide deck are Somerset's existing high needs provision capital allocation, the need for additional state maintained specialist places, the different types of specialist provision and cost differentials, the benefits of delivering additional state maintained specialist places, the need to deliver reasonable adjustments, and the activities associated with delivery. Next slide, please. So since 2021-2022, Somerset Council has been allocated £29.222 million worth of capital funding, which is there to deliver additional specialist places and improve existing specialist places for children with SEND. To date, Somerset has only spent in the region of £9 million of its allocation. And the purpose of the paper going to executive on the 1st of October is to agree a 3-year capital programme which exhausts the remaining £20 million. Next slide, please. So the capital programme, you can see the outline there over the 3 years. We are looking at 3 different types of places. So we are looking at SEN units, but they are refurbished units, repurposing existing mainstream school accommodation. There are brand new SEN units, which we will need in certain places where we don't have latent physical capacity in our school sites, usually around the M5 corridor. There are special school places, so these may be on the sites of existing special schools or as satellite units that sit somewhere else, but are attached to that main special school. For example, the Cove in Wellington, which sits on Courtfield Secondary School site, is actually part of Selworthy Special School in Taunton. And then we have accessibility, or in brackets SAI, which is the School Access Initiative. And that is a programme of capital works we undertake, reasonable adjustments to make sure that local schools can meet the needs of local children with SEND. So you can see over that 3-year programme, if we could just go back, Ayushi, thank you. We are looking to spend £19.954 million and create 352 additional places of various types for Somerset children with SEND. Next slide, please. So in terms of need, the key driver for the project is to increase the number of state-maintained specialist places in Somerset. Somerset has a significant under-provision of state-maintained specialist places and is over-reliant on high-cost, independent, non-maintained specialist provision. We call that INMS. Somerset currently has over 500 children and young people placed in INMS at significant cost to the high needs budget. Transport costs are often higher for children in INMS, as they are typically further from home and we are less likely to benefit from economies of scale. Where a child can be placed in a state-maintained place, it will typically cost around £40,000 a year less. Where a child can be placed close to home, we can also significantly reduce travel costs too. What are SEN units? They are small specialist provisions on mainstream school sites. Where possible, they are hosted in repurposed and enhanced surplus accommodation, but new build solutions will be considered in communities where pupil numbers remain high and there is a limited surplus accommodation available to repurpose. SEN units also align with our local first approach to pupil place planning, in that they enable more children to have their needs met at their local school alongside their peers, improving connectivity between families and schools and reducing travel time and costs normally associated with accessing specialist provision. These provisions not only directly support the needs of children placed in them, but also help to uplift the expertise across entire schools and provide a source of advice and guidance across wider education communities once established. Support. SEN units are new in Somerset. In many cases, these are the schools or trusts' first specialist provisions, and there are risks associated with opening any new provision. To mitigate this, those schools which are hosting SEN units have been offered a package of pre- and post-opening support and training delivered by the local authority, SENSE, and the Somerset Parent Carer Forum. We intend to continue this offer throughout the duration of the 3-year programme to ensure the rollout is successful and sustainable. Special school expansions. Special schools can be expanded in 2 ways, either by providing additional accommodation on existing special school sites or delivering satellite units on or close to mainstream school sites in communities where there is limited specialist provision, either by repurposing existing accommodation or delivering new builds. These provisions are slightly different in their specification, allowing them to cater for children with the most complex needs. The interplay between mainstream schools, SEN units, special schools will need continued careful consideration as we develop education pathways for children of all ages and need types across the county. And then to close, reasonable adjustments. The key use of the high needs provision capital allocation is the delivery of reasonable adjustments in education settings to make them accessible for local children with SEND. These adjustments support the council and schools within Somerset to meet their duties in respect of the Equality Act 2010 and Part 3 of the Children and Families Act 2014. Reasonable adjustments may include improved physical access to the school, improved physical movement around the buildings, improved access to the curriculum, improved facilities within the building for children with physical impairments and medical conditions, and improved facilities within the building for children with sensory needs. Next slide, please. In terms of delivery, prior to any project being commissioned, officers will engage with a range of stakeholders, including school leaders, governing bodies, parents and carers, elected members, Department for Education and diocesan bodies, to discuss the benefits and parameters of the works being delivered. Where required, the council will also undertake the statutory processes, including formal consultation required to create or expand specialist provision. On academy sites, this activity sits with multi-academy trusts, who ultimately seek permission from the Office of the Regional Director. And while we outline a specification for every type of project provision we create, all projects will have a unique characteristic and challenges. We're also constantly learning and adapting specifications to better meet need and deliver increased value for money. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Phil, for the presentation. Just a couple of quick points for future presenters. We can assume that the slides have been shared. We may need to go on a line by line basis, because I know that we're not. Please don't. It's not directed to you, Phil, but I know there are a couple of members around the table that would highlight the problem that to me, and it's an issue. So we can assume that we've read all the slides. That's the first one. Just a bit of clarity. So at our pre-agenda meeting, one of the points that I made about the decision-making process, members, was the fact that in an ideal world we need to see the policies for it. So that's some of the reason why you'll see that this particular one. Thank you for that policy was shared. So that was why it was added after the agenda was published. So I'll apologise for that, but I just thought it would be helpful if we had as much information when it comes to making the decisions as we can. My vice chair is making the list, so we'll go. So at the moment, I've so indicating for the speak for this first one, we've got Martin, Ruth, Andy, Swarvek, and Francis at the moment. Nick will add that there as well. So first up, Martin, Councillor Lovell, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about just the funding arrangements. Can I get the feeling that this will be entirely funded by the Direct Schools grant, and obviously supplemented by savings which are not made with the INMS and the transport? Or I suppose the clarification I want, will there be a call on other Somerset Council funds which are not currently being called on? Thank you.
So the capital funding required for the physical project comes from a grant that comes directly to the council from the DFE. To date, we have received £29 million. That is cash in the bank. So far, we have spent £9 million. So we have to exhaust the remaining £20 million. Hence, we've created this 3-year programme.
Just following on from that, then, just to created the 3-year programme to meet our future needs.
It's to catch up as best we can. We are looking to create 352 additional places through this programme. We currently have over 500 children in INMS. What we need to do over the next 3, 4, 5 years is reset that system as best we can, put more of our children in state maintained specialist provision.
Thank you. I just needed to clarify that point, because if someone listening back may have got the wrong end of the stick for that one. Heather?
I was just going to say, no, exactly right, Cam. I can feel and still hear the frustration from conversations I've had with Phil before, where the absence of a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan or even a 1-year plan in some years is the frustration. So you're absolutely right. There are children who have needs which we aren't meeting in the best way that we can. And this plan is to intend that we do that and do a better job of it. So yeah, we're not just spending the money in case it runs out.
Thank you. Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of questions and some feedback for you as well. So I suppose my first question is, why haven't we done this sooner? Why haven't we spent the money? Sorry, Phil, I've got to ask that question. Because actually we've heard multiple times at committee that we have an insufficiency of placement. So that'd be my first question. Second question is really a lot of this presentation understandably is around funding and focuses on the funding, but actually we need to think about outcomes as well. And we know that although we have some excellent independent non-maintained schools, outcomes are not consistent across the piece. So featuring that in would be really helpful, I think, just for us to know. And then I'm going to hold on and give you the feedback afterwards, if that's all right, if you can't to answer those first.
Thank you, Ruth. Question one, I'll be very careful, but I only inherited the duty for specialist sufficiency in April of this year. So given that we opened 6 new SEN units 2 weeks ago, I think we're doing quite a good job. I'll leave that there. On outcomes and quality, yes, we know that we have a kind of mixed bag, if you like, across independent non-maintained settings. They are very high cost, but outcomes for those children are mixed. Hence, we want to bring those children back into the state maintained sector where we can help with our partners to drive those standards up and improve outcomes for children, not just in terms of attainment and progress, but also their transition into adulthood and engaging with their direct community.
Thank you. I'll give you feedback now. So I attended an event last week in Minehead, and I met one of the young lads that's going to be going into one of our SEND units that turned up to the event, and him and his mum are absolutely ecstatic about the fact that he is able to attend. And I'm not going to say which school because Francis will work out which school in a minute. But he's very, very happy about the fact that he doesn't have to go so far now, travelling to an independent, non-maintained. And yes, so having a little that was very, very excited was lovely to see. And that's what we really want to see for our children.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hadley, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is pretty much based on what Ruth just said, actually. I'm pleased that we've got a 3-year plan, and it seems to be, I'm happy with where we're going with that, and the feedback from Ruth actually is encouraging that it's working. But my concern is that we've got a 5-year cohort of children that we did have the money to assist, and we've sat on it and we've done nothing, and now we're spending it. And I suppose my big question is, why have we done that? Why didn't we look after the children that we'd already got that were struggling?
I'll sort of jump in that one because Phil has answered that partly in where it goes, and without wishing to put words into Heather's mouth, perhaps it may be helpful if we talked about the strategy. So the units, individual units, is a relatively new strategy, I think, Phil, is it? And the move from specialist schools to a more modular form is something that I know it talks about in the paper, but could you just cover that a little bit for us? And I think that'll answer some of your question, Andy, I hope.
Thanks, Andy. So just a bit of context, education services restructured in April of this year, and different officers were given different or new responsibilities, and officers that had been with us previously have subsequently left the council. In terms of the SEN unit programme, what we're trying to do is align with our wider place planning priority, which is keeping children close to home. So we call that local first. Historically, we've always delivered our specialist provision in our main population centres, so in Bridgewater, in Taunton, in Yeovil, and some provision up the A361 in Mendip. And we would transport children in bulk to those large settings in strategic locations. That's all well and good, but because of our birth rate, which has been declining since 2011, we have emerging physical capacity in our primary and secondary schools. And what we would rather do to help uplift our specialist expertise across the system is create small pockets of specialist provision in each and every town in Somerset, using that emerging physical capacity in our primary and secondary schools. So this is taking a huge amount of work to go out and find those schools, and we've created automated dashboards which help us to find the accommodation. We go and visit every school, we have a conversation with the school leadership team, we look at local need, we look at the building, we commission a range of feasibility studies. Just last week, we reviewed 9 more feasibility studies, of which 7 can definitely go forward. So once we've taken this decision on the 1st of October, we will go ahead and commission those 7 projects I had another 3 visits last week. I've got a visit tomorrow. I've got 2 emails sat in my inboxes with inquiries. So we have all of the schools want to play their part in this project, and it's now for the council to meet that general ambition and deliver 352 places over the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Slavik.
Thank you, Chair. I have a slightly different question, Phil. My question is around, first of all, I want to say it's a very ambitious plan, which Somerset has, and it's the right thing forward, because I think that will resolve some of the issues with special education placement. My question is around expertise, which will be able to maintain that rapid growth, because it is incredibly rapid growth. And we know that a lot of schools are struggling with expertise in order to put this in place. So I'm just wondering if the strategy for the growth and development of new SEND provisions should also be aligned closely with how do we then sustain that recruitment and development of the staff and so on. And I think that way, that will give us much better ideas of how effective and how successful that project is. So that's the first question. And second one I have around the proposal which was presented last year around schools accessing funding for children on the SEND register before going through any other kind of ways of accessing money. That obviously was put on hold because of the other circumstances and restructure of the council. However, I'm just thinking about this. If we're looking at 3 to 5 years plan of the growth, there will be schools which will have quite a number of children still within SEND needs, and how the strategy incorporates the funding for them during that period before the SEND provisions will be open, up and running, and sufficient amount of them to meet the needs. And the last one I have, it's around the wording of the SEND unit. I spoke with some of my colleagues, and the unit suggests something totally different, independent and on the side. If we look at the offset regulation and the emphasis on inclusion, I think the provision is exactly what we're talking about and describing. So I'm just thinking about maybe we should reconsider what we're calling the SEND provisions, and if unit is the right way moving forward. Thank you.
If I may give Phil a couple of minutes to remember the more complex questions at the beginning, which were very good and very helpful. What you've just said, Swarek, is something that Joe and I have heard as we've been going around and thinking about. Unit isn't the most sympathetic name. I suspect there was something about differentiating between resource bases, and this is something different. But if I could have thought of it earlier, I think an inclusive classroom is what we're talking about mostly with these units, because they are making a space usually for one small class. And I think, I think we all need to think an awful lot. We work at such speed that we talk in a way that we understand internally and don't think about how it lands with real people out there. And it's only you go, oh damn! And the more time I spend with these wonderful guys, the less I'm new now. So we need those fresh ears and that landing. So I think that's really important. So I just wanted to accept that one. Now I've forgotten, because I was going to say something about one of the ones you were talking about as well. But I think no, it was about I did remember as well, because I asked questions also about this. I'm sure Phil's got the answers as well as my colleagues in the room, which is around, you can make bricks and mortar. I'm not going to say very easily, because it's not always easy and it's quite tricky. You can make the physical part, but then making sure the staff are right in the school is really important. And so I know there is work going on to kind of work with the staff from our EPs, our educational psychologists, going in and doing that kind of training around de-escalation and all the skills that you guys have in spades, where you are, Spark, to get more of that in the mainstream schools. And I keep asking, how well is it going? Is it going quickly enough? Is it doing right? And you're right, across a long period, we've got a lot of work to do with a lot of people. So I think the idea is, if as much as possible, it's not just going in and training the staff, but training trainers within the staff body, so they can share and do peer support for each other. But perhaps my colleagues know more about how well that's landing at the moment.
Thank you, Sławek. On your first question, you're absolutely right about training and development and recruitment and making sure that we have sufficient numbers of qualified, experienced staff to lead this provision. We've got the kind of onboarding induction program for those staff, and we know we need to roll that out over the 3 years. We're working with you and your colleagues through Sense, with Ruth and her colleagues at the Parent Carer Forum, Dr. Tim Cockrell within our education psychology services leading from our side. I think it's also, it would be remiss of me not to mention that our mainstream schools already have a lot of expertise within them, and they are delivering some provision for children with quite complex needs, but they aren't adequately resourced to do it properly. And I think what the SEN unit programme allows us to do is create formal pockets of specialist provision and resource it adequately for the first time. That then takes us, I think, into your second question, which was about fairer funding and how we get funding to children as early as possible so they don't have to escalate through the system and get EHCPs. Now, we know there hasn't really been a formal response to the consultation that was taken last year, and I know that Amelia, when she is back, will be looking at that as part of the DMP process. And then to tackle your third question, by law, these are SEN units. We have to call them what they are. A special school is a special school, a resource base is a resource base, an SEN unit is an SEN unit. What we encourage the schools to do is give that unit a name within the school so everyone knows which part of the school the unit is, and it helps us in terms of consultation. The reason we are using the term SEN unit is because with a resource base, there is an expectation that that child will have a minimum of 50% of their time in the mainstreams part of the school. For some schools, that created anxiety at the point of consultation. So we've gone down the SEN unit route because that requirement falls away and it gives the schools full flexibility to determine how much of their time they spend in the mainstream school or not. But it won't necessarily be a building that is detached from the rest of the school. Sometimes these classrooms are in the middle of the school because it's latent physical capacity. Sometimes they will be a new build because the schools are full, and we have to determine through feasibility where the best location for that new build is.
Okay, that's an interesting point, because one of my concerns when I first looked at and started it was hearing about a unit over there that only some of the young people go to. And I know some of the feedback I get from children looked after is the fact that they feel a little bit embarrassed at times, or because they're having to go. So the fact that it's as inclusive as possible, I think, but that has to be a driving force behind it, so that these young people feel as if they're gaining something rather than highlighting something. That's just a personal comment for there. Francis, you're up.
No. Just briefly to say, as I declared a personal interest at the beginning, in one of the schools I have to do with, there is such a classroom, which is a unit in the middle of the school, absolutely part of the school, not somewhere else. So far, so very good. It is staffed with specialist staff, etc. And the younger siblings of two of the children there are terribly anxious to join it because they think it's much better than their own classroom. So it can work. How on earth did that happen? I'm sorry, I thought I'd turned it off, or at least write down. Apologies. But it's good. And certainly my visits have been please, can I have a stool like that? One of the ones that just will wobble a little bit. For the children who need to move, it just works. So
supportive comment.
Supportive comment, that's all.
Thank you. Nick, Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think I've had my first question answered because, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Sławek. Yes, Mike Sławek. I was also a bit confused as to the difference between an SEN unit and what was the SEN provision that every school statutory has to make, but I think you've kind of answered that one, so that's all right. So I'm just going to quickly, and I'm assuming with the SN units, they will get one-to-one provision there, is it, when they go to the SE?
No, they don't, sorry. No, they don't get one-to-one provision. There is a higher staff to pupil ratio, and the timetable and curriculum will be adapted to what's in the child's education, health and care plan.
All right, so it's actually slightly different from the normal SEN provision, because normally they just go for a couple of hours a week, isn't it? And just have one-to-one, just helping them cope with literacy and numeracy and accessing. The other thing I was going to ask is looking at the accessibility, because one of the things that is missing from the special accessibility incentive, yes, it's initiative, that's it, is places and projects. And I wasn't confused as to whether it's 15 places or it must be 15 projects. But looking at the list of the SAIs, I mean, there's a lot of IT equipment which I think is essential for students, but also software. There's a huge amount of software available that allows students now to access, it can record the lesson, do all their note taking. Is that something we're also providing? And also, one thing I have noticed is missing from this SIA list is perhaps teaching assistants. One thing that really helps students access mainstream education is just having someone sitting alongside them, guiding them through the lesson. Is there a provision? Are we thinking of funding more teaching assistants?
Thanks, Nick. So picking up on technology, yes, we have provided lots of technology. We've provided iPads, Braille readers, magnifying technology. Now, often when we buy that equipment, there is software installed and we can capitalize that cost. But where there is an ongoing license cost for that technology, that then sits on the revenue budget of the school, as capital funding cannot pay a revenue cost. But it's, yes, something we do quite often for children, usually with a visual impairment. In terms of the provision of teaching assistants within the SEN unit, because they get an enhanced level of funding in the way that a special school would, we would expect each unit classroom to have a couple of teaching assistants in there to increase the staff and pupil ratio so that those children's needs can be met. In terms of teaching assistants in schools, generally, that will be funded from the school's revenue budget. They will determine how much support they need for their children and use the budget that is available to them, either through their standard funding or their no-show SEND or the top up they have for children with EHCPs.
So none of that could come from our 20 million.
Thank you, Nick. Do you want to knock your microphone off? Simon, Councillor Carswell.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a number of questions, but I've cut them down because a lot of them have been answered, so taking too long, whatever. The staffing's mainly been answered. I assume with falling school roles, people will just be retrained, redeployed, because it won't be easy necessarily to get the right staff. So I'll go on to the figures. The government funding is very up and down, and I don't know how that's worked out. But also, is it likely that funding will continue past 2026 and therefore there'll be more money coming in? And also on your capital programme, the figures seem a bit convenient for year 2 and year 3. They're exactly the same. There's no account of inflation, rising staff costs. It just seems to be a number, and then we times that and we get exactly the same figure for 26, 27 and 27, 28. What's the 9 million that's been spent on? Because it is concerning and nothing seems to have happened. And with the delivery, the first thing on delivery says, prior to any project being commissioned, we will engage with all the stakeholders. I would have hoped a lot of that would have already have happened. That's just me.
Start the last question first. So yes, in terms of the activity that we do pre-commission, much of that has been done. We've done the visits, we've spoken with senior leaders, we've spoken with governing bodies, we've spoken with the diocesan bodies. Everyone is relatively comfortable. So at the point we want to commission, everyone is on board with the project. The key challenge for us as a council is making sure we have our governance in place, which enables us to deliver such a high value programme over 3 years. Now, I agree with you in terms of the numbers in the table. They are fairly arbitrary when they set us a target in order to use the funding that is available in an ambitious but realistic way over those 3 years. We are setting ourselves a target of 352 places as a minimum. We expect a number of those projects to be a lower average price. Some of them will be a higher average cost. Where we can, we will attempt to over deliver. In some years we will spend less, in some years we will spend more, but the intention is to utilise all of that funding through commission projects in 3 years with 352 places as a minimum. Now, in terms of how that funding was allocated historically, there is a methodology that the DfE use. It uses a lot of different elements that will be Somerset specific, but it depends on the overall pot they were allocating from nationally. Now, we expect more funding to come for 2026, 27, but we don't anticipate being told what we're receiving in April until March. But at a briefing last week led by the DfE, we've been informed that the DfE has been giving a multi-year funding settlement, and its intention is to give local authorities for the first time a multi-year funding settlement. So we should know what our high needs capital provision allocation, no, the other way around, high needs provision capital allocation should look like for maybe 2 or 3 years ahead next March.
Just one final question. So this money, is there a clawback then? Is the government saying we're going to take this money back if it's not spent?
It's not explicit, but our experience of the DfE to date has been if you don't use it, they can call on it. So it's important for us that we catch up on the spend that should have taken place in the last 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. Online then, Councillor Hunt, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And my apologies for being a bit late today. Yeah, actually, Councillor Carswell's just asked the question, much of what I wanted to delve into. I imagine, I mean, the 20 million pound that's outstanding, I share everyone's concerns as to why this hasn't been utilised in the past. I appreciate it's been coming in dribs and drabs, but there's been lots of we haven't got any money left, but actually there was some there in the first place, but we need to move on now. So I'm pleased to see the 20 million pound has been allocated over the 3-year period. Councillor Carswell talked about the clawback on this. I mean, the government does claw back, and I imagine, as you've just answered, that this would be in fact clawed back if we didn't use it. So now my question then reverts to the 20 million pound that we've now earmarked over the 3-year period. One assumes that secures it to the council to spend on our 3-year plan, and won't be clawed back by the government. Just coming on from that very slightly, the government are now looking at giving us more money, as you were saying, about over a multi-year payment, as it were. Are we a bit concerned that because we've already allocated a multi-year 3-year strategy, they might think, well, they don't need it this time because they've already got 20 million pounds spread over 3 years? That's a slight concern. Thank you.
Thank you, John. They're good questions. We have to do a statutory return in October back to the DfE, which sets out how we will spend our high needs capital allocation. We are confident that by having a 3-year forward plan, they will be confident that we need and will utilise the money. As and when further year allocations come forward, all we will do is either increase our ambition in the years we've already set out in the slides today, or extend the programme to add additional years. But this is very much about catching up as quickly as we realistically can with the officer resource that's available to us to deliver as a minimum 352 places over the next 3 years. And Lee, just to add, I know part of Councillor Carswell's question was, what have you done with the £9 million? I'm happy to provide that detail to you to share with members, as we will be submitted that in our return in about 3 weeks' time.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of things for me. So currently, my understanding is that young people get an education, health and care plan. Many of them do. That outlines a requirement and provides funding for how that's to be met. How is that process going to fit into this new bit? Go with that one first.
So every child in an SEN unit will have an education, health and care plan. So at the point that plan is being completed, we will consult where appropriate with those SEN units to see if we can place that child in their local school in the SEN unit specifically. So that kind of tidies that up. And as we roll out more of the SEN units, we have more and more options available to us as a local authority to consult on. But our ambition is to place local children in their local school using our local first principles.
So, and then to meet their individual EHC plan as well. So, okay, I hearing that sometimes you go into some schools locally and there may be 3 or 4 teaching assistants of some sort with different young people. So are we saying that they would move to these SEN units at the same time, or are we going to be running them both separately?
So we would anticipate that some existing staff may move into the SEN unit, but also that schools will recruit additional staff where that's necessary. What we anticipate happening in our schools is this continuum of provision. So that kind of purely mainstream offer with classes of 30, then there will be an offer for children at SEN support type level where they are accessing the mainstream school for the bulk of their time, but coming out for specific types of support, going all the way through to children in the SEN unit who may spend the majority or all of their time in the SEN unit if that's what's right for them.
It's interesting because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is actually a very innovative by Somerset in our concept. And hypothetically, we're waiting for a government white paper which potentially may be aiming in this direction. Are we shooting from the hip, or do we think that government is going to be singing along with us?
We think that strategically this aligns with the direction of travel being followed by the DFE, but also this is right for our children.
Perfect, thank you. That's the point, because the bit that I think that bit of clarification is that we're not going out on our own, and if something changes in the short term, it's not going to come back and bite us. You're nodding, thank you, Phil. But I think it's relevant, because the question would be, what if the government decided to change their mind? But I think the fact that potentially we've got a 2 or 3 year settlement coming out, the fact that we're already making plans, and hopefully if we gain some extra in that, we can build on that. I think it's a good thing. And I think it's important that we make that point. So thank you. We've had, do you want to come back, Ruth? I was just going to summarise, but good shot.
Sorry, very quickly. Just to say that I think it is very interesting around the SEND units. There's been a lot of questions this morning around what the training and support package is, and I wonder whether that's something that might be worth sharing with members of the committee, because there are documents which outline what that looks like, and how that's working on not just for the units but the whole school culture around inclusion. And also just to say, and I'm not sure I want to look at Phil while I'm doing this, but I know, having done a couple of roundtables recently around the white paper, they were very, very interested in the SEN units in Somerset, and we'll be getting in contact. Sorry, Phil.
Thank you for that. I've just taken Swarbeck. Did you want to just quickly come back?
Just very quickly, thank you very much. Just wanted to add that this is why I mentioned the strategy with recruitment and so on, because I think if we had the overview of the strategy and then report it to the board here, we will be able to see all the different elements. And that kind of brings me as well to something which we discussed previously during the meetings, the quality assurance document, which then again allows us to see how successful that is. And the last thing, I mentioned earlier the ward unit, and I just looked at the Families Insurance Act, Section 20, which describes the special education provision, and it does not mention any 50-50. It is within the special education, within the mainstream school, which is set up in addition or different from of the same cohort. Just kind of wanted to clarify that legal frame which you referred to.
Thank you. I'll also send you the link to the respective prescribed alteration guidance, which sets out the difference between a resource base and an SEN unit.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, members, for the questions. I'm conscious, so I'll cover the point first of all. So we've been asked to look at this policy prior to it going to executive for them to make the decision. I think what I will say is generally, and I think more than half, well on our way, are very supportive in the direction of travel. There's some concerns about how it's going to work and the different bits of that. I'm just conscious that potentially what you're doing, the executive will be making a decision to move forward with this. I think one of the things that Swabic specifically picked up, but I think this committee would like to be kept involved in the implementation and then the monitoring. And I think hopefully the quality assurance around it, because that to me is going to be, if we're going to be out in front of the crowd, then we need to be clear that what we're doing is right. So I'm hoping that Jamie and/or Aisha are making a note of this as I go, so that the fact that the committee is supportive. I think the committee would like to be kept involved in I'm saying this to Heather as well as Phil. So in the quality monitoring and making sure that we're doing that, and feedback, because I think the potential behind this is really exciting, and I think that we're there. It's an ambitious plan that I've written down. We would need to be looking at both the implementation plan, the skills that are being put in, the staffing for it as well, which are all things that have come out of the meeting. So feeding into executive, those are the elements that are concerned. The fact that young people need to be using these for the best for them, so that they can continue them flourish. The fact that that potentially it's an opportunity for young people to be schooled near where they live, the impact of travel and all of the different elements of that are going to be covered. I'd written we need to keep an eye on the fact that we access, because with some of the multi-academy trusts and local authorities, the selection process for some of the young people may be influenced. So we just need to watch that again, how it's being implemented. But otherwise, I think it's pretty positive. Members, if there's anything I haven't covered, then please come back to me. But otherwise, thank you, Phil. Thank you, members. Thank you, Heather. That's agenda item 8 done. We're moving on then. Agenda item 9 is I think going to be an interesting debate. Fiona is presenting, so please come and take this is the one where we didn't have a policy or anything shared, did we? So Heather.
Thank you. Since you mentioned that to me, and forgive me, I should have noticed this and didn't. I think it was just an absolute oversight. There is a paper that should have accompanied this, and I think we just didn't get it there, one way or the other. I'd rather own up to a snafu than some, it's a, can't say this, but it's not conspiracy, it's something else that starts with a C. Just a bit of an accident, I'm afraid. So there should have been something with that. But I know that when we had a very quick gamble through it at an informal exec, the presentation that Fee's about to give will actually give you a lot of the information that you need, and I'm sure we'll try and answer anything that isn't obvious in the presentation. But my apologies for that, Chair.
No, thank you for that. It's just that being the constitutional nerd that I am, and the fact that section 19 talks about legals and different things, I think it's important that we have as much information as possible to allow us to make it or feed into the executive's decision. And the hope would be that executive, when it takes the decision, has the relevant information, because I'll let Fiona do the presentation and then we'll come back after. So Fiona, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Just taking on board comments from the chair around the presentation and what would be helpful for you. Assuming that everyone has had eyes on the slides, is it helpful for me to summarise the slides, or would you prefer to go straight to
the important bits? The important bits that we need in each of them, that would be brilliant. That would make it a little bit easier. But thank you.
Okay, can we move on, please? So just by way of introduction, I am Fee Turnbull and I'm the new head of the virtual school, and I'm overseeing the development of the Section 19 policy. So policy and legal context. So Section 19 is part of the Education Act 1996, and it's our statutory duty on local authorities to ensure that our children of statutory school age who cannot attend school for reasons of illness, exclusion or other reasons receive a suitable education either at school or elsewhere. I think the key thing to remember here is this duty has been in place for almost 30 years, and we've had a process by which we've kind of managed that duty through our pupil referral units and our hospital education. But what's really key is the process, the policy and process that we've had has been really tested in the last 2 or 3 years, not least because of the increasing demand and the number of children who are struggling to attend school. But equally, we know that there have been the local government and social care ombudsman has repeatedly judged Somerset to be our policy and practice to not be fit for purpose, and we're not fulfilling our duties. So it's critical that this needs addressing, and we look at this and do a full review and consider how we move forward in terms of our policy, but also about recognising the increasing demand and needs of our children. Move on, please. So you'll see the Somerset context. So you'll see clearly here that we have very high numbers of children who are persistently absent, so are missing more than 30 sessions or 15 days of education. Now, most of those children we're monitoring within our education teams and working with schools about making those reasonable adjustments and looking at some of those reasons for repeated absence. We've got another chunk of children, again, high numbers of children not in school or not attending for extended periods. And again, we've got education teams who are supporting around inclusive education and what that looks like and the reasonable adjustments so those children are attending on a regular basis. And then we've got a small minority of children who they're often a group who are seeking educational healthcare needs assessments. And quite typically, they're a group of children who have SEMH needs, social, emotional, mental health needs, and or autism as well. And it's this cohort who we are finding who are particularly struggling to attend school. And this would be the group of children that we'd be focused on in terms of the Section 19 duty, alongside working with our schools to make reasonable adjustments and what that inclusive education, working with their families and the children themselves as well. You move on, please. So statutory minimum is not clearly defined, and that's something that we're seeking to do through our review of policy. And we're looking to differentiate between 3 outcomes when we're thinking about the statutory minimum. So we've got pupils who can attend school and have received all the necessary support to do so, and therefore it's the parents' duty to ensure that they do attend school. We've got those pupils who who can attend school, so not eligible for Section 19, but actually we recognise that that group of children are going to need multi-agency support from our education teams. And then we've got our Section 19 category, which are those children who cannot attend school for those reasons, for reasons of medical exclusion or other. You move on, please. Thinking about that intersection with our EHCPs, and we've done a lot of kind of evaluative work around the pressures of Section 19 duties and thinking about so where some of those pressures are coming from. And we know that demand is being driven not by the limitations in Section 19 system, but in the EHCP system. So, for example, the rising demand for requests being made for educational healthcare plan assessments, but also the delays in those assessments as well.
And what we know is we've got a group of children with those diagnosable conditions, such as our emotional based school avoidance, which is typically the group of children that we're seeing around that Section 19 policy. Those families are feeling really frustrated that actually they're not getting the support that they're needing, and are applying for educational healthcare plans. But we know that those processes are really lengthy, and we know that when children start to disengage with school and not attend, actually, if no intervention is made, then some of those children spend months and sometimes years out of school, and it's incredibly difficult to get them back into the education system. And with that, there are multiple consequences if we don't get that intervention in place at the right time. Next slide, please. So the two options really is the a request for educational healthcare plan, and the funding is awarded pending assessment. The EHCP is finalised and the funding awarded. Or option 2, which is our preferred option, is where we are implementing that Section 19 funding, kind of time limited for a fixed amount of costs, and we would hope to see that actually that high quality intervention at the right time would mean that for many children that educational healthcare plan, or that need for that educational healthcare plan, is reduced, and may be able to re-engage with school and things are going really well. But they will recognise that there will be still a group of children who have access to Section 19, and actually they still do require an educational healthcare plan. Next slide, please. So thinking about current policy, there is some clarity there around the process in relation to exclusion, and also around hospitalisation and children with active medical intervention. But what's missing is that clear determination on eligibility in cases. And we're wanting to start kind of move beyond that being determined by professional judgment of often a sole medical professional, and sometimes they're kind of lacking that expertise around those kind of other needs. And also thinking about that criteria for making determinations. So we want a process that really clearly defines what evidence is to be collected, how it will be collected, how those decisions and determinations are made, and then how we're communicating that and following that through with families and with our settings. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing is to set up multi-professional, multi-agency decision-making panel. You can see the group of professionals that would be members of that panel. We would be looking to have a kind of graduated response to that. So settings and families can do requests for Section 19 assessment. And in the first instance, we would take that to our locality triage, where we've got multi-professionals, we've got educational psychologists, we've got members from my team present, we've got medical, our health colleagues there, and from children's social care, to look at collectively what we could do to support at that kind of front line in terms of supporting settings to re-engage children and make those reasonable adjustments. And then that panel, where that bit had been exhausted, having that panel in place to look at those requests and looking to see what has already been tried, what are the implications of that young person not being in school, and thinking about that determination about whether that young person is eligible for Section 19 or not. So there are 3 papers currently in draft. The Section 19 policy, in particular, the terms of reference for the decision-making panel is in its very early stages of being drafted, as is the process map. And what we would like to do is, if we're able to progress through with the policy, is at the same time standing up the members of that decision-making panel and working with our partners to start developing finalising the terms of reference and the process map. Also the guidance documents that go alongside that to make sure that decisions are being made in a fair and equitable way, but also on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. So just here, you can see the implementation plan, which kind of sets out how we're working through implementation of the policy in practice. At the minute, we're on track with that and we're making good headway. So we're looking for a positive outcome from today and from the formal exec in a couple of weeks' time. And last slide, please. Happy to take any questions.
Members, if you have questions, could you please indicate? I'll just go in with the first one just to give members a chance. This is with the implementation of this process, what will change? Because we haven't. There are EHCPs are problematic at the moment, getting them through, and so how. So we're talking about putting in place a number of different groups that would then feed in, and I made a note down here. It says, I think you said something along the beyond professional determination. What do you mean by that?
So that's thinking about. So in terms of what would change, because our policy hasn't been clear for some time, there's a lot of confusion with our families and with our settings. There's an increasing need for provision that's other than in school, and families are feeling very frustrated that actually there isn't the support there when their child is struggling to engage with education. So one of the things after the restructure, we've looked at our education teams, so that we've got different professionals from across our within our locality work who can step in at an earlier stage and try and move things forward for children, young people before they've completely disengaged with education. So it's more timely, on the ground provision and support for settings, support and challenge for settings, but also working with our families as well. In terms of what else will change, because we haven't had that clear policy that's brought a group of professionals together to kind of determine whether Section 19 is eligible or not. It's often been one single medical practitioner who's trying to make that judgment. And as we know, these young people, their needs are broad and complex. And actually for that group of children that are determined under other, actually there's lots of factors that need to be considered. So bringing that multi-agency approach will help us to make better, more timely decisions and help these young people before we get to that point where actually they've been out of school for such a long time. It's incredibly difficult to get them back in.
Thank you. I'll just have a couple of colleagues. I'll bring you in a second. And just a couple of points I wanted to clear up before. So Heather, what is the timeline for this decision? Is it so? I'm assuming the paper is going to your next executive or the one after.
It's the next executive. I'm looking at my colleagues just to make sure I've got that one right. It's the 1st of October.
Okay, that's fine. So back to Fiona then. So this is quite a big deviation from where we are to where we're going, and Section 19 is there's some very clear legal guidance in relation to it. So if I had the policy in front of me, I would be looking to the legal implications at the back. So have we as a council looked at the proposals, and are our legal teams comfortable in the direction of travel? If you can't answer it, don't please. I'm happy for you to we could. It's just, I think it's an important element to it.
So our policy, the draft policy, has been through our legal team. I am aware from Ruth and conversations that I've had with her today that actually Ruth has got some concerns around some of the legality of it. So we're very happy to take that back to the legal team to have a more in-depth look at it, because that bit is critical in terms of making sure we are compliant.
I'm not sure, but forgive me if I still stole your thunder, Ruth. I apologise if that's the case. I didn't mean to do that. It's just, to me, the government guidance, legal guidance, or the elements that are attached to this, the fact that we've been failing for so long, the fact that, to me, this appears to be a root and branch changing the way we're doing something, I wanted to be comfortable that we're going in the right direction. I haven't seen the policy, Heather. I have some concerns about that. That's me as a councillor and me as chair of the scrutiny committee. So I wanted to get those out in the air now because I'm not sure where we're going to go with the conversations with the questions in a minute. So I'll go to Ruth first.
Yeah, so I have 4 things from me. The first one, I totally understand that you will probably not be able to answer because unless you've gone and got a law degree in the last few days that I don't know about. So on the slide which talks about the Somerset context, you talk about the 5,736 children who would not be eligible because it is not reflected in legislation. I would refer the council to the case studies of Westminster City Council and Surrey Council, which would indicate that that may not actually be accurate, and we need to check that because both of those cases are basically slightly different to what you're saying. So I think some case law needs to be looked at, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on that one. The next one for me is around the provision needs to be full-time. There's nothing in here that says that child's entitled to a full-time education, obviously unless they medically would not be able to do that. So that needs to be reflected within it, and can we just have some confirmation, as Chair has already said, we haven't seen the policy. I think the slide that talks about the statutory minimum and talks about pupils cannot attend, again, I would refer you to the Surrey case because that's very clear that there was a difference of opinion between the school, the family and the council around what was deemed as could and could not attend within that case. So there's one case which is around bullying, one case is around high level of anxiety, and within that case it was actually deemed in favour of the families, and the local authority should have made section 19 provision. And then the last one you've already touched on, but just that reassurance really for us as a board that it will be a case by case, because that again is something that's very clear in the legislation that it needs to be a case by case.
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, so definitely case by case, and I think that case by case as it goes to locality triage and then to decision-making panel. I think one of the challenge, and we won't be the only local authority facing the challenge, that the kind of framework around this section 19 and the category of other is problematic. It's quite woolly. And that's really difficult for us to really kind of nail down what that is and how we work that. So I think for me, the kind of takeaways, we need to be as confident as we can be from a legal perspective that our policy and process is within the legal framework. And that is quite difficult because it is quite woolly. But I think we need to be confident that we've done the best that we can, and also build into that policy and process, taking on board opportunities to review and reflect and look at case studies outside of our local authority to learn from that and to make those adjustments as we're all kind of trying to navigate section 19 and make sure that we are all fit for purpose and compliant.
Heather, did you want to come in?
I certainly haven't sprouted a legal degree since we started talking about this, so I wish I had. But all I could say is just in terms of any kind of assurance I can give, which is the last few months at least, more than, there has been discussions within the council and within the council's legal team, because you're right, it's a really complex, it shouldn't be, but it's a really complex issue. And I don't think there's any one person, legal person in the country who can say definitively what it is. I think if I can understand what I think the intent is of what we're trying to do with this, and I'm really not mansplaining or anything, but just for my comprehension about it, I think is having a policy will at least do a couple of things. One is it will take away a singular professional person making a decision and try to get that decision in the round, which is always hopefully going to make a better decision. Let's hope. And it will certainly stop that argument in the same sort of way potentially. The other one is I don't think the intention is to try to close the door on people by any means, or children. That's not the intention. It's not to try to gatekeep. I think the intention of having a policy is to actually say, this is how we're doing it. So when people aren't happy, there's something to judge us against. So I don't think it's going to solve every single thing in the world. And I think that case by case is the only way to go. With the case numbers we've got, that's quite hard. But I think we're going to have to do that. But that's my understanding of where we've got to in the absence of not having the full documents in front of you.
Thank you. I think you may have got a gist of the direction of travel at the moment. this committee are being asked to comment on a policy we've not had sight for that could have potential legal ramifications that would be way outside of the problems we've been having on the journey to this decision. I've got some other members, but I don't want to make any assumptions for what they're going, but I may have we may have been going in a direction of concern. John, I've got you online, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the members in the room first and then come back to you. So Andy Hadley, Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I think Ruth has pretty much picked up on the point that I was going to mention, but a couple of points. The 5,736 children, is that, first point is that individual children, or is that some of the same children doing it multiple times? Also, the government guidance seems to contradict the government legislation, and that's all I can see because that's all I've got. And that could swing either way. And if that does go down to the fact that these are eligible for Section 19, that seems a very large figure and could have massive cost ramifications for this council, I would think. So is it the same amount of pupils? Is it 5,736 separate pupils? That seems an awful lot that are out of school. And if not, how many separate pupils would it account to?
So that is separate pupils. And I think it's about keeping in mind that Section 19 is one part of this. Actually, there's also an awful lot of support that we need to be offering, and also supporting and challenging our settings in terms of their inclusive practice as a starter, but also the reasonable adjustments they are making. So it's about us as a local authority, as well as our Section 19 duty, but also ensuring that we are holding our schools to account in terms of tracking and monitoring those young people who are not attending regularly, that are not in school for extended periods, but also working with our inclusive curriculum and training teams to make sure that schools feel confident that they are inclusive and can make reasonable adjustments and understand what children's needs are, and also how they're working with families and young people. So it's a kind of multifaceted approach across education teams, Section 19 being one part of that. And if I could just add also that part of DMP, we're looking to secure a full-time role of a SEN specialist lawyer who we could have working with us alongside our members on the panel to support us and help us navigate through when we're looking at those individual cases and making sure that we are applying the law and working in a fair and equitable way.
Thank you. Nick, Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the children not in school, the 581, the majority of whom could attend school with support, does our policy need to show that we've really thoroughly investigated with the, sorry, I put my glass on later, thoroughly investigate that the school, is excluding them for valid reasons, or do we need a policy that, or include in our policy elements where we can demonstrate that we've pushed back on the school and saying, is this really fair, or have you just got a very Victorian behavioural management policy? The other thing I just picked up on, sort of put it slightly off tack, the frustration that parents have. Second point is frustration parents have. And I noticed at the beginning, one of the recommendations for delivering the statutory statutory obligation to educate children is that if they're in hospital, they get hospital education. If they're awaiting ECHP, do we have an obligation to perhaps provide private tutors for them? I mean, they're what, £50 an hour, but just keeping up their maths and English whilst they're going through the process, it might just help alleviate the frustration that parents see because they're getting some tuition, maybe at the home, that might have issues itself. But since there is an obligation to provide, or some suggestion that provision of hospital education is provided, is the same that home education is provided if they're out of school and they're just waiting for a decision.
So I just try and remember all those questions. So the first point about clarity in the policy, and I appreciate that you haven't had eyes on that on the policy, but I think it does set out in terms of what our expectation of settings would be in terms of reasonable adjustments, standing up team around the child meetings, ensuring that professionals from my team or the other education teams are involved and they are seeking advice and support.
That's expelled.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that is clear within the policy. In terms of the support for children who are in the statutory process of educational healthcare plans, in particular, my teams are working with settings with families in terms of whilst they're waiting, what are we doing to support? And some of that will be around working with the school in terms of they're on a school role, so actually it's the school's responsibility, but being really creative about that. So if that young person can't access school in school on site, what could we do differently? So the use of our AV1 robots, schools will often put in place tutors at home as well. So it's our role to be working with schools and the families to think of creative ways to support that child whilst we're waiting through the statutory process.
But it certainly, I think the pandemic certainly opened up whole avenues for that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Nick, are you done?
I am done.
Thank you. Do you want to look at the microphone off? John, Councillor Hunt, thank you for your patience, John.
Well, lots of patience here, Lee. Thank you very much. Fee, firstly, congratulations on your new job and good luck. It sounds like a lot to do there. Yeah, firstly, everybody sort of answered or asked the questions, some of that I was going to say. There's clearly lots of legal issues that we, as a committee, as Lee said, need to look at. Difficult to decide this soon to the executive meeting. But I was listening to a programme this morning on the news about how the government, the current government, are looking at removing possibly or certainly revising or changing the current care plan system, trying to revise the whole care plan system, which it probably does need doing. And actually what I quite like about this, even though I suppose some people could say it's a little bit draconian in a way, but I don't think so. I like the fact that it gives children the chance, certainly when they've applied or their parents have applied for an EHCP, it's a long route to that. And this does give a chance. I think one of your slides showed, they either carry on to an EHCP, but actually with the intervention that you can make under Section 19, it impresses me that actually this might help them. And halfway to the EHCP, they may discover that actually they don't need that at all. And they can actually reintegrate into the school world, whatever the issue was prior to that. And certainly with all the bodies coming together and making the decision together, I thought that was very good as well. So I wish you well with that. And I would certainly be very supportive of it, subject obviously to the legalities being sorted out. Thank you, Chair.
There you go. Save the best to last.
Thank you, John. And I would say with the restructure from the 1st of April and rethinking about how our teams in education are working to support children, young people and their families and our settings. And I look at my team in the virtual school and demand for my team is exceptionally high. And that's a real challenge, particularly as we've still got many vacancies. But actually having a team of staff who can get in at that kind of before we get to crisis point and work with children, work with families and settings to look at creative ways to make those reasonable adjustments at the earliest opportunity. Because what we do know, where we've done that well, we have managed to re-engage children and young people, and we have managed to avoid the need for an educational healthcare plan. Not in every case, but we do know that that works. So it's lots of things coming together all at once. It's the renewed policy and practice around Section 19, taking the opportunity to look at the competing demands that we have, rethinking and restructuring our education teams and thinking about how we work with children, young people and families, and trying to move that forward so that we can reduce some of that need and certainly make a dent in those children who are not in school.
Thanks, Vic.
Thank you. I think a point that's often forgotten in all of this is all of our aims and aspirations should be get the young people back into full-time education at the earliest opportunity, and the more we can do that, the better. Just a couple of quick questions to me, and then I'll summarise. So we talked about legal, my concerns for that. This sounds like there's going to be some more money needed. What do finance say?
I might defer to my finance colleague who sat right behind me. We've got Joe sat behind me.
Happy to defer, but I think we've done the legal element. I would expect in the policy papers that would come forward would have an element from finance. So I ask the question. You've been trumped at the moment. Claire, did you want to come in now or afterwards?
I can come in on the legal question because my understanding or my recollection is that the authority's legal team have reviewed the Section 19 policy. I'm fairly sure that I have seen a document that the draft Section 19 policy, that it went to somebody in legal that I know very well, and she sent me the commentary on it, and Amelia looked at it before she went off unwell, and we amended it to that level. So I'm fairly sure that the legal stuff has been done. I'm not aware of those judgments or the case law that Ruth is referring to, so I will go back and check that they have taken those into account in reviewing that policy.
Thank you. As far as the legal goes, I would hope the work has been done. That wasn't the point I was trying to make, Claire. It was the fact that it would be contained in the policy and the legal issue, so that this committee can see what some of the concerns were raised. And I think that can still, picking up on Ruth's points, I think that still could be done. So thank you for that. I'll go back to the finance then. Finance question.
Yeah, we have made an initial assessment of the impact, the financial impact of this new policy. Suffice to say, it's nothing like 5,000 plus children that would potentially be affected by bringing in this new policy. It's more like I think maybe 70 children, or about 140 children that potentially need to be assessed, and then 70 children we came up with, and that was working with Amelia again before she went off unwell, and the rest of the service to determine how many children might be impacted, and then that cost, I think the impact was just under £500,000 per annum, and that's the cost of giving those children alternative provision, basically based on average costs.
Just to come in there, and that's the challenge that we trying to work through the numbers in terms of the group that we're particularly focused on is quite difficult, and we kind of need to test this out and review it, and think about those implications financially, legally as we go, because it is a bit of a unknown entity because of the woolliness of that other category.
The use of the word bully gets scary at times. Mary, your hand's just gone up. Do you want to come in?
Hi, yes, sorry. I'm confused about, I mean, it's clearly we're at the very beginning of this planning and so on, but would the cost of alternative provision not sit with the school the child is on roll with? That's ordinarily what happens. Why would it come back to a centre? Does it come to the virtual school because they're not on roll?
So
I might have missed something. I'm sorry if I've been dim.
No, so there is a responsibility of the school to use the funding that's available to them to support, and that's the bit about our support and challenge in terms of what are they doing to support, how are they using the funding that's available to them, to ensure that we have worked through that and there's nothing further that could be done, and actually the school do need additional resource and support, because that child, we've kind of exhausted that. So there is a responsibility for schools, and that is clearly set out in the policy.
So this additional funding is then when that's been attempted. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, John. Do you want to just come back in quickly, please?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, if I may, just a really brief one. We're looking at, we're talking about costing at the moment. I mean, I want to emphasise, I know for all of us, it's about the best outcome for the child, which of course it is. But if we, based on what Fee was saying just now, if about half of these 70, so 35, could actually avoid for themselves and their parents, and of course the council as well, the cost of going further on with the EHPC. I've even got the letters around the wrong way, I think. But if we could avoid that for those 35, it would be a better outcome for them. In fact, it would be a better outcome for everyone, including the school's finances as well. So actually, this could be a very much a good thing, I think.
No, absolutely. There's no issue there. And I'll just speak, I'll take my chair's hat off for a second to speak, but I think this is an exciting plan.
Yeah, it is.
The problem I have now, putting my chair's hat back on and this committee, it's our duty to hold the decision maker to account and to be so clear that the decision maker has all of the necessary information available to them when they take the decision. And we as this committee haven't got that. There's the legal element, there's the financial element, there's the new policy element. There's one of the questions I was going to ask, your slides talk about initial meeting between health and education. So what feedback from them did we get? How have we changed the policy in it? I'm looking at Heather because I've got a long list of we don't knows, and I support John's positive comment. I think it's a positive, and I think the direction of travel is positive. The concern I have is the detail. And thank you, Francis, for nodding. I appreciate it. I'm looking for a feed from the committee because no one's made any recommendations or anything yet. Before I bring you in, Ruth, just to say, so I've written at the bottom of my note the one thing that based on hearing what we said today, Heather, what I will say, the likely outcome from this committee is going to be something along the lines of, we've expressed a lot of concerns. If you think you've got enough information to make the decision, go ahead. But I don't think we as a committee can support that now. I asked Jamie to double check when it's due to go to October's executive. So if it was me, and I'm not wishing to put words into members' mouth, but I would want to see more detail. Do you want to come in and save us?
I don't think I can save you, but I certainly would. And I'm a singular person here, so I can't speak for everybody, but you're absolutely right. What I'm hearing from all of you is that probably if you had the stuff in front of you, you probably would have raised some questions about it, got us to look a bit more in more depth about it. And you may have said, yes, in principle, but these things need to be clarified, and you wanted the assurance about it. And the thing that I'm sitting here thinking, well, what I'd love to do is magic the documents to you. And I don't know what the impact would be for us if we say delayed this one bit until November. And I don't know if that's even possible or not for you to see it again. I don't even know when your next meeting. So I think what I'd like to suggest, unless somebody who's listening in the ether can tell me a different way of doing it, I think is, can we take the comments that we've got? Let's talk about this outside of the meeting to see if there's anything that we can do to remediate this before the 1st of October, or do that decision in a different way. But I don't know what our options are, but I'm happy to be tasked to take that away and see what we can find out as soon as possible.
I wanted to avoid us reaching a point where there may be some concern, and I'm sure that members will turn around. I don't want to put words into their mouth and say, I don't think that it's there. I've got a couple of members to bring in, but Claire's put her hand up, so I'll go there first to see whether we can find an acceptable way forward.
So if the key issue is the legal position, then even if we got legal advice internally, we can't share that with the committee because internal legal advice is confidential and can't be shared outside. That's one of the legal department's sort of rights, really, that their legal advice is confidential. What we could do is get the legal department to write to the chair of the committee to say that they have reviewed the policy and that they are satisfied that the policy meets legal requirements and reflects the outcomes of the case law that Ruth has raised, if that would be helpful. Because it seems to me you're saying that the legal aspects of this, of the potential policy, are the stumbling blocks. I know you haven't seen the actual policy.
Thank you for
which is a
feeding in. Let me see what let me see what my members have to say, and then we'll see where we go. Ruth.
So, Chair, the rumblings in this corner is that we cannot make a decision because we have not seen the documents to make a decision, and therefore we would like it to be deferred until the next meeting, or we have to stand up a meeting to look at this in the meantime if it needs to be done earlier. That's the rumblings from this. I'm going to call us the naughty corner. Yeah, I was just.
No, that's right. Just so we're not making a decision. But the potentially the recommendation from this committee would be that potentially that our advice to executive would be bring the policy to us, and I'll paraphrase that. Jen.
Our next meeting's on the 20th of October. When is the executive? I know it's October. We don't have a date, so
It's the beginning of October. Francis, do you want to come in?
Yes, same sort of rumblings from me. We could meet, have another session quickly, if the documents can be produced for us and we can have a proper time to look at them. There are ways forward, I am convinced, but I feel rather the same. Now, I know that I understand the fair access protocol is being delayed because that hasn't yet been agreed by enough schools. Well, these are both really important things. I feel slightly uncomfortable about this being treated differently.
Okay, so thank you, members. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Claire, for being Heather. I think so. Speaking as chair of this committee, I would suggest that there have been a number of concerns raised without sight of the policy. Could I ask that so the committee, my recommendation will be that our recommendation from this in relation to this paper committee is that we recommend that having heard the debate and questions, that the executive member responsible for taking the decision considers the position and considers whether bringing the policy back to this committee would be advantageous to them before they take the decision. And just so that everyone's out of. I'm using as the constitutional nerd. It's quite clear when the decision makers should be taking the decision, they should be comfortable they have all the valid information available to them at the time of taking that decision, and has considered all of the appropriate recommendations. So I was just being slightly procedural and giving you an opportunity, Heather.
I appreciate that. Let me take that one away and come back to you, Chair, on that one. That would be that I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's a very clear recommendation from Scrutiny Chair and Scrutiny.
Thank you, members. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Fee. Sorry if this is baptism by fire. It was your first scrutiny meeting. Thank you for taking that. What I will say, members, we've just been going literally for 2 hours now, so I'm going to take a 10-minute comfort break, and then we'll come back for the final couple of items. Thank you. Okie dokie, members. Thank you. I'm just conscious my scrutiny manager is currently making his way back, but if I talk slowly, hopefully he'll be back in the room by the time we get to moving on. So we are at 16:05. And we are on agenda item 10 of our agenda, which is the Fair Access Protocol. And we have, again, so the paper was shared between meetings, as a supplementary, which is there for your issue. So I'd like to welcome Heather Good and Gemma Reeves, who will be presenting it, I'm assuming. So, ladies, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm Heather Good. I'm the Head of Education Leadership. We have a new team within the team, the Preventing Exclusion team, and Gemma's going to present this afternoon around the Fair Access Protocol. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So hi, everybody. My name is Gemma Reeves, and I'm the Service Manager with the Preventing Exclusion team. So I'll summarise the slides as you have already had them. So the Fair Access Protocol, commonly referred to as the FAP, is really about ensuring that vulnerable children do get a school place, and it is about ensuring that children get a school place as quickly as possible. particularly in vulnerable circumstances. It is most routinely used to secure places for children who have either been permanently excluded previously and then looking to return to a mainstream school, or it's routinely used to secure a school placement for a child who's applied to a school and that admissions authority has refused that placement due to evidence of previous challenging behaviour. So although the Fair Access Protocol is wider than those categories, that is predominantly what the Fair Access Protocol is used in securing school places for children that have had displayed challenging behaviour in schools.
Yeah, but if you just pause for a second, one of the problems we have with our microphones is they're directional. Could you move it? Because not everyone will be able to pick it up well. But so I apologise for interrupting you, but thank you.
So every local authority must have a fair access protocol. It must be devised, developed with the schools in the local authority area, and it must have sign up or agreement from 51% of the schools in the area. Because the majority of children with challenging behaviour or who are being permanently excluded are older children, it does usually affect middle schools and secondary schools more commonly than primary schools. The legislation does have a few do's and don'ts that we have to adhere to. So one of those things is we have to ensure that there's no one in, one out policy in terms of placing children into schools directly when a child has been permanently excluded. And we have to ensure that we don't disproportionately affect any one particular school. So all schools must be treated favourably, equitably and consistently. So there are things like that we do need to consider. To get to the stage that we are currently at, we are currently consulting with all Somerset schools. Prior to that, we have sought feedback from head teachers, both through sort of regular meetings that we have when we are placing children back into school. We have received feedback from head teachers, but we have also gathered the views of SASH, which is the Somerset Association of Secondary Heads, and we have undertaken an engagement survey at the end of the last academic year. So the paperwork has now gone out to the schools. We are consulting. It was originally proposed that we brought this to the executive on the 1st of October. However, with discussions with the head of SASH, they have asked that that we extend that process to allow them time to meet as a group of secondary head teachers to consider the proposals, and that has been agreed. So yes, originally this was proposed to come to executive on the 1st of October, but now that will come back in November to allow those school head teachers time to look at this collectively and provide feedback. The proposed change.
Sorry, I just might say was a bit of, so just for clarity then, so obviously is this policy that's been shared likely to change then because of the feedback from other bodies?
The process is we've gathered feedback already, so we believe that we have proposed something that should be agreeable to the head teachers. The process is asking them, do you agree with it or not? If they agree to it, there won't be any changes. If they don't agree to it, then we'll be looking for feedback as to why, and then we'll have to consider next steps, because we do have to have sign up and agreement from schools in order to take this further. So the proposed changes are changing how we identify schools who are in scope to admit a child in accordance with the Fair Access Protocol. We're also looking to change it. Currently there are 4 meetings that look at this, 4 panels, and we would be looking to change that to 1 county-wide panel. We're proposing an increase in the data that is used to identify school placements. Should schools not offer placements, we refer to something called equitable share data, and we're proposing that we increase the categories to more accurately reflect children that they are admitting into their schools. We're proposing to reduce the timescales for the equitable share data so that actually it reflects sort of the children who have more recently been admitted to their school who have been displaying challenging behaviour. and also to really have a more dynamic approach with recognising that actually some children who are placed into schools won't remain at those schools, and actually therefore that child with that challenging behaviour won't be in that school cohort. So those are the proposals that we have suggested. And because this is a revision to an existing fair access protocol, there are also things that are currently in the existing fair access protocol which we are proposing remain the same, and that is around schools continuing to chair the panels, continuing to be the decision makers at the panel, continuing with the local authority to chair the panel, although we are proposing that following the PRU consultation, that changes from a local authority or officer of a service manager level to the executive head of the PRU, subject to that consultation. It is also encouraging schools to continue to offer placements rather than necessarily relying on the equitable share data, and continuing with the voting system that's currently in place. And we are also proposing that the Ofsted judgment inadequate, though we recognise that judgment system is changing, but we recognise that schools who are deemed inadequate or will be in that sort of lower quartile of the new Ofsted framework are exempt from being sort of expected to take children unless they choose to, and to continue with the same aspect that if children are currently under the Education, Health and Care Needs Assessment process, that they are brought to the Fair Access Protocol for a decision only if the parents want that right to be exercised. They can, of course, continue to have that placement identified through the statutory send processes. So there are some proposed changes. There are many aspects that we are proposing remain the same. And as I said, the timescales have changed, and that's directly in result of feedback from the head teachers who have asked for that. So that's basically the summary, but I'm happy for any questions if I can help.
I've got a couple of members. Thank you for getting early. So Ruth, would you like to come in?
Hi, yeah, so a few from me. So you've made it very clear in your presentation that no school should be disadvantaged through this. Sorry, it's on, is it not? It's not close enough, sorry. So you've made it very clear in your presentation that no school should be unfairly disadvantaged. I noticed in the equality impact assessment, however, that it does say that that could be potentially a risk for some schools around their funding, but there doesn't seem to have been an acknowledgement of any mitigation around that. So that's my first question, is what mitigation is in place for those schools. Also, it feels very heavily weighted towards middle schools and secondary schools around the consultation and the engagement. Is that disadvantaging our primary schools? As a primary school governor, I get shouted at if I didn't say that, wouldn't I really? And then also around the actual pupils themselves. So it talks in the policy that obviously I appreciate the majority of these sit within middle and secondary schools, but I'm nervous about the concept of having a panel stood up for primary when needed. Would it be better to have that put into the standard and then stand it down if we don't need it, just knowing how difficult it can be with coordinating people's time?
I'm going to work backwards, Ruth. So the primary panels being stood up only when needed, that is something we considered about putting into the revised county-wide panel. In my experience, there are so few primary school children that we would probably be standing up lots of schools to stand them down most regularly. But it is an important point because primary schools, often when they do come to these meetings, are quite inexperienced in this field, which is why we did talk about actually could we have it as one panel, because that might be more supportive, but it probably would impact on a lot of head teachers' time only to be stood down regularly, but something we did consider. The middle schools, secondary schools feels more heavily weighted. We are particularly mindful in making sure that we do have a strong sign up from our middle and secondary heads, because it does impact on them so much more. I can only speak from my experience since April, but I've only had to have one child from a primary school come to an allocation panel in that summer term period, compared to a lot more children from middle and secondary schools. So we do recognise the importance of making sure all schools understand this and understand it and are on board. But if we don't secure the middles and the secondaries, then actually they're the people that we're engaging with the most. And the funding around in the Equalities Impact Assessment, I'm going to have to look into that, and I can't answer that question now. There shouldn't really be any change to the funding here, because the funding is when a child goes into a school through this process, the ORPU funding goes through to the school. But I would need to just check that point and follow up later.
Can I come back, Chair? Is that okay? Yeah, so it's in there. And also the other thing, if you are going to be looking at the Equalities Impact Assessment, there's also some areas where you've got percentages and you've just got XXX and not actual percentages. So that needs to be updated as well.
I just conscious, I think Claire's come off of microphone. Did you want to come in, Claire?
No, sorry, that was an error.
Thank you. Jenny?
Really quickly, in the supplement papers, when you've got the acronyms, you've got the explanation of what the acronym is, but when you, in the presentation, that isn't. And I read the presentation first and was Googling to try and find out what some of them were, and then read so could we have them at the bottom as well, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Just making actually, it's a valid point actually. Ayushi's got a glossary of terms which we have on our system. So what we'll do, if we send them to Ayushi, what we'll do is share the link for our glossary of terms of our acronym buster at the same time, which will it saves having duplication. That's what if we start having multiple. But thank you. Where are we to? Oh, Schwalbeck, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully my question is quick to answer. Just from the procedural point of view, you mentioned about the people referral units consultation, which was extended. And also you mentioned about the survey which went to the heads, and if X amount of percentage will say yes, that will will go through. But you also mentioned that the consultation will have a bearing on this one. So I'm just wondering how that the timeline will work out.
Yeah, I can't answer anything about the PRU consultation. We're mindful that the timescales are very similar. I think now we've pushed back the executive till November. I believe the PRU consultation will finish first, and then that could inform around the chair. But if that isn't agreed for some reason, then it would remain with the local authority, is my understanding.
So a couple of points I was going to pick up. So it's interesting that you mentioned the difference between the secondary, primaries, and middles, because the paper talks about 269 schools, and you need 50% plus one for it to. I'm assuming you've got a spreadsheet and it's there going. It was interesting the comments you made about middle schools and secondary and primary, because the question would be the other way, I suppose. Ruth made a valid point about secondaries and middles getting priority over primaries. When it comes to your percentage allocation, I'm assuming primaries would care less. I don't mean that in a negative way. So therefore, your 50% would be easier, and you may in effect disproportionate middle and secondary schools. Do you understand? Is that?
Yeah, what we wouldn't want to get to a position of is that we had 51% of schools sign up, and that didn't include any middle or secondary schools. So we're really mindful of that. I mean, obviously every response carries the same weight, but that would not be in the interest of children or our schools if that was the conclusion. So we are very aware of that, and that's why we've listened to SASH and we've said, yep, okay, carry on, and we will push back our timescales because we think that's really important.
Thank you. That gives me some reassurance actually, because I was slightly to get concerned. I'm not. Members, I've not made any notes of any real negative comments or points in relation to this. As such, I don't see a problem. But what I will say, my little caveat, is in reference to the last decision that we had. So if should the policy change, then I would suggest that you might drop me a note, the chair and vice chair, just to say, because we may be talking one line. I'm not talking about potentially bringing the whole policy back if it's just the odd little change. But members, are you happy that we're happy with the direction of travel with this policy? We're happy that the policy goes forward for the decision to be taken. However, there is a caveat that if it changes dramatically or significantly, if it could come back, and you're happy for the vice chair and myself to just review that to see where any final decisions. I'm not seeing any shaking in the head, so thank you. Okay, are there any other questions or points in relation to that? So this one we're happy to accept. Should it come, Mary? Just in time. I was just about to move on. Mary, come in, please.
Sorry, the app's gone really glitchy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Just one question about I know that you're not supposed to allocate a child to a school that's in more challenging circumstances around Ofsted. Is there an intention? I know that the new scorecards form more complex, but are you planning to define what a school that's in circumstances looks like, because it's not the straightforward one-word judgment anymore. I just think it would need some consideration.
Yes, I think that's something that we would need to consider.
Thank you.
Noted. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's that one. We'll draw a line under that one and move on. If you want to be just very quickly then. So agenda item 11, for those of you not there, and just to reiterate for Ayushi, one of the things that I introduced the items for information, and as we're discovering, there are a number of policies that are coming forward, sometimes that we're being asked to note. Realistically, there aren't. If I'm being asked to note, I would not waste your time with it coming out. So what we do is ask that be circulated, and members, it's put then the onus on you. So at this point in the committee, it just so happens there isn't a list for this one. But just going forward, the reason that item is on the agenda is so that if there has been something circulated, and you think there's something relevant that needs to be brought up, you can use this part of the meeting to raise it and come back to us. As such, there are no points or nothing circulated between this meeting. That being said, we move to the last item. So at 4:24, I close the meeting. Thank you very much for your time, and we will be back in October. Thank you, everyone.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all.